When I was a child, I was given a copy of the Observer's Book of Butterflies by a librarian called Anne Semkins. I read this book from cover to cover. I learned about all the species that it described. And of all those species, it was the long-tailed blue that I considered the least likely I would ever see in the UK during my lifetime. However, as I now reread W.J. Stokes' description of this insect, I can't help but be astonished by the prophetic nature of his words. And he said, if by chance a few females were to visit this country in the early summer, they would most probably lay eggs, and the caterpillars resulting would be able to feed up and attain the perfect state here. This film is about that prophecy, but it's not just my story. This is a story told by many.
In recent years, there have been three great migrations of the long-tailed blue into the UK. The first was in 2013, the second in 2015, and the most recent in 2019.
Despite many efforts on my part, I never actually did get to see the long-tailed blue in the UK during 2013. However, it was restricted to the south coast of England, and in many cases sightings were found from my hometown of Brighton and Hove.
I was in continental Europe when the first of these three migrations took place and discovered it was happening through the Sussex branch of Butterfly Conservation's website.
Neil had set the marker in early August by suggesting that he was expecting to see swallowtails and pale clouded yellows and long-tailed blues, but nothing had turned up. We already had lots of clouded yellow in the county, so there was some sort of migration taking place. And then on the, what did we have? It was on the 9th of August, a report from, sent in by Ralph Hobbs, actually who sent to Michael Blanco and then forwarded on to me, of long-tailed blue, Pett Village. Fantastic. And more extraordinary, in a way, was after that we got another report from the day before that of Arundel. So, you know, right across the county, suddenly, I say right across the county, two of them had turned up, but in very different locations. And we thought, oh, this could be exciting, but nothing happened then. They all went quiet for a little bit.
A key figure in this story of the long-tailed blue is Neil Hume. Neil's probably seen more migrant and native-born long-tailed blue butterflies in England than just about any other Englishman.
Tell me now, Neil, this is a fascinating subject, this whole thing about the long-tailed blue. And it kind of started with you making a prediction on the website, didn't it? What made you do that?
I keep an eye on things overseas. So when I predicted that we were going to see long-tailed blues imminently, it wasn't via a crystal ball. I was well aware that there were numbers of long-tailed blue building up on the shore, on the coastline of Northern Europe, mainland Europe. So one or two had also been seen down in the West Country, so it was a pretty good guess really that with suitable weather patterns we were going to see a few come over, and it only took 24 hours.
I was keen to learn a little more detail about the first record of the long-tailed blue recorded in Sussex during 2013, and so travelled to the east of the county.
Hey Ralph, good to see you.
Hi Dan, pleased to meet you too.
So we're in Pett Village in East Sussex, and in 2013 I understand this was a location of considerable excitement. What happened?
It was. Well, that day in August I got a phone call from my friend Trevor Buttle, who lives right here, to say that he thought he'd just had a long-tailed blue in his back garden.
Right.
And had a photo.
So what did you do?
Well, of course, I shot straight over. And within 20 minutes I was there looking at the food plant, willing this female long-tailed blue to come back.
Did it?
Unfortunately not. We waited a couple of hours, but in the meantime I did manage to find 2 or 3 eggs there on the food plant.
So was that the end of the story then?
No, because a little way down the road I knew there was another site for the food plant, and I checked that on my way home, and lo and behold there was an egg there too.
Wow. So that was definitive really, wasn't it? That meant that either that or a different butterfly had certainly been at that location as well.
And I suspected the same butterfly.
Right.
But it got me thinking, where else do I know where the food plant grows in the local area? And I went out the following weekend to search. First at Rye Harbour, where the food plant was virtually over. Nothing there. But then I went on to Winchelsea Beach and found a lovely clump and found 3 or 4 eggs there.
Right.
They had actually hatched. They had little holes in the egg. And then I went on to another site at Broad Oak Breed, where my friend had a big clump of food plant in her front garden, and sure enough found 4 or 5 eggs there too.
Wow, so that's like 75% of the sites you visited, you had the eggs.
I did. How good is that?
That's remarkable. It's absolutely remarkable.
Yeah, pretty exciting.
After these initial sightings of the long-tailed blue, many enthusiasts eagerly browse the Sussex Branch of Butterfly Conservation's website on a daily, if not hourly basis for news of further records.
And it wasn't until over a week later that Dave Harris reported having seen them in Newhaven. So things got exciting again.
In 2013, I went out into the garden. I live in Newhaven on the coast, and the intention that day was to trim an area of lawn which included quite a bit of broad-leaved everlasting pea, quite a pretty plant. And I was just about to pull the cord on the strimmer when, much to my surprise, out of the corner of the eye I caught a shadow, and I thought it looked a bit strange, so I went to have a closer look and realised at once that it was actually a female long-tailed blue. So I had a good look around the garden, and in total there were 3 females and 1, maybe 2 males that were flying around, but by a couple of days afterwards they had all disappeared.
Sightings of the long-tailed blue in Newhaven piqued the interest of Mark Colvin, who promptly set about exploring the area around the port.
I see Dave Harris's reports of long-tailed blues in his garden. I believe he had 4 or 5 individuals there, and this is really exciting for Sussex. I contacted Dave and he kindly invited me down, and we scoured his garden but couldn't find any, unfortunately. But that's the way it goes sometimes. They'd obviously moved on. We then decided to check out nearby areas, and on a peak close to his house we actually found a number of eggs, all of which showed signs of emergence. So no adults, but at least we'd had evidence of them breeding in Sussex. Based on this, I came back to the area about a week later, and I checked out the area near to the castle, and here I actually found 2 larvae, which was great, but then even more exciting, I found an adult female. I was over the moon. I couldn't believe it. My first ever Sussex long-tailed blue.
Of the 65 sightings made in Sussex during 2013, a staggering 20% were made in people's domestic gardens, which was probably why it was so easy to make those sightings. But then as a whole, 46% were made in association with either broad-leaved everlasting pea or sweet pea, and hence the origin of the term, find the pea, find the butterfly.
The sudden appearance of the long-tailed blue at Newhaven led to a great deal of interest from local enthusiasts, and so gradually individuals started to search the whole of this coastline. However, the discovery of eggs raised the question, could W.J. Stokes' prediction come true?
I went down there, I think it was about my 2nd or 3rd time to Tide Mills, and I'd not found any long-tailed blues down there, but I was persistent, and I arrived, did the rounds of the Tide Mills, and then I spoke to Mark Colvin, and he said, well, check any common blues that you see, because they look very similar when they're flying. And I had seen what I thought was a common blue down by the opposite the buildings at Tides Mills. So on my way back, I was looking along the grass verge, and then I spotted a blue butterfly, and then it settled, and then I crouched down and I saw its 2 tails, and I thought, whoopee, it's the long-tailed blue I've been hunting for, and I found it on my own. That's brilliant. And it turned out to be a female, and Neil Hume said that it was the first photographed emergence in Sussex in 2013, which made me feel really good having found it. So I got some quite nice pictures of it, and it was in amongst the grass, so I had grass stems waving this way and that, and I thought, well, I've taken all I can, it's opened its wings, but I've got grass stems in the way. I'll see if I can separate the grass and try and get a photograph without any grass stems covering the wings. And as I tried to move the grass stems away, it caught the movement, it went up, it flew across the water, and that was it. But it was a wonderful experience. I had about 10-15 minutes with it, and it was my first, so I was really pleased with that.
Colin's discovery encouraged the formation of a small group of particularly dedicated long-tailed blue hunters. As a consequence of an unspoken agreement, it was Neil Hume who was chosen as the man to contact in the event of a sighting, and it was he who assimilated their findings and in turn reported these accounts to the Butterfly and Moth Recorder of Sussex, Colin Pratt. The value of these coordinated volunteer hours cannot be underestimated, and without their input, it's clear that there would be little to tell about the story of the long-tailed blue in Sussex. Of these band of merry folk, it was James Arnott who was the first to discover a mass emergence of the long-tailed blue and to observe a wild coupling for the first time in Sussex.
But back in 2013 I was concentrating mainly in tide mills where there was an awful lot of everlasting pea, and some eggs had been found earlier in the season. I'd found one with Nigel Kemp, a lovely female, and then I've been down several times since then and saw the odd individual. Some of them didn't hang around very long, but one particular time there was two down there, so I thought, let's give James a ring, get him down there. This was about 3:30 in the afternoon.
Every day on my way to tide mills looking for long-tailed blues, I was walking past a nice clump of broad-leaved everlasting pea and sort of ignoring it really. It's proved to be a big mistake, because I thought out of desperation it was too late to get to tide mills. I'll check that everlasting pea, and to my surprise when I got there, the place was alive with long-tailed blues. I tried to count them, soon gave up, and started to take some pictures. I was busy taking some photographs, and I noticed out the corner of my eye a mating pair. So I thought, I've got to phone Bob. You dropped everything, didn't you? And started to run. And I snapped away. And unfortunately for Bob, they split just before he
Yeah, it was basically a second male, wasn't it?
There was.
That's what split them up.
Yes, there was an interloping male kept bothering the mating pair until eventually they parted. And I got a few shots of that as well. And then when you arrived, we basically followed them to roost, didn't we?
Yeah, there was a lot of them had roosted by then, but we followed one and it was still basically there the following morning, and I managed to get my son there to see it, and also Nigel Kemp managed to get down the following morning to see it before it warmed up, and then he was off.
Of course, Newhaven wasn't the only location where the long-tailed blue had been turning up. Neil Hume had been looking elsewhere for suitable habitat.
But I'd had my eye on Beeding Cement Works because of the amount of broad-leaved everlasting pea, which of course attracts them very, very well. Most of the sightings are around broad-leaved everlasting pea. That's not to say it's the only food plant, but because there's so much growing, scrambling over that brownfield site in effect, I had my eye on it as a good candidate. And also it's in a river valley. River valleys tend to funnel migrating butterflies as they do birds. So I was quite confident that they would turn up there, and lo and behold, I managed to get a nice fresh female just outside the boundary fence there.
The first long-tailed blue recorded from the UK was found in August 1859 by a Mr. N. MacArthur, who saw it on the Brighton Downs in Sussex. Consequently, it became known as the Brighton Argus, and later the Peapod Argus, which resonates with our experiences of this butterfly today. Prior to 2013, only 22 specimens had been recorded in Sussex during the 150-year interval since its initial sighting in this county. Until recently, the long-tailed blue had been considered an extremely rare butterfly.
The 2013 long-tailed blue immigration was beyond our wildest dreams. I'm part of a generation of butterfly people who felt the days of large-scale, mega-rare immigrations were gone. The 1940s, things like that. But suddenly, 2013 came along, the long-tailed blue invaded us on quite a broad front in the southeast, and that was the biggest immigration of long-tailed blues in entomological history. We thought those days were gone. They're not.
The long-tailed blue explosion has to be the most exciting thing that's happened to British butterfly for what? 50 years? And you're probably going to accuse me of hyperbole for saying something like that, because I'm sure I've said something similar about the Queen of Spain fritillary or the large blue returning to the Cotswolds or something. But it's amazing how the world of butterflies continually gives us surprises, but just no one would have predicted that this butterfly would look like it was the most likely candidate to colonise Britain, or at least to become a permanent regular migrant in the way that the clouded yellow does or the painted lady does. I mean, this is virtually a subtropical butterfly. It isn't even a butterfly of continental Europe, it's of southern Europe, it's of the Mediterranean, and to think that it's in Britain on the south coast is just astonishing.
As well as Arundel, Beeding, Brighton, the ever-productive Newhaven and Pett, long-tailed blue was also seen at Shoreham and Eastbourne. In fact, J.R. Everett even saw one coming in off the sea at Seaford's Head, where at the splash zone it landed on his foot of all things. Well, if that's not nature saying, let me give you an insight into insect migration, I don't know what is.
C.B. Williams includes a distribution map of the long-tailed blue in his new naturalist volume, Insect Migration, which demonstrates that up until 1958, the UK records were mostly coastal. This pattern was repeated in 2013 when no one individual penetrated any further than 7.9 miles away from the Sussex coast.
So by the end of 2013, a pattern had emerged. Migrants coming in July and August gave rise to offspring which revealed themselves in September and October, usually on and around the broad-leaved everlasting pea that the parents had been observed on during the summer.
So W.J. Stokes' prediction had been proven to be correct, not that this was of much solace to me, for I had single-handedly failed on every occasion to see the long-tailed blue on English soil during 2013. Every time I was notified of a sighting, I would turn up only to hear, "You've missed it." In fact, most observers quickly concluded that this butterfly was quick to move on. I truly believed I'd missed my only chance to see the long-tailed blue, which was reinforced when during 2014 not a single sighting was recorded in Sussex. However, on the 29th of August 2015, something remarkable happened. Gavin and Nicky Baxter reported a long-tailed blue from Worthing, on the coast, on some broad-leaved everlasting pea. Then on the very next day, Sam, Fran and Amy Fletcher reported a sighting from their garden in Seaford. 6 days later, a report came from Bognor Regis by Joseph and Duncan Reevy. I dared not contemplate the possibility that another mass migration of long-tailed blue could be starting all over again. Next came a photograph from Mark Colvin of a mating pair taken not 150 metres away from where James Arnott had photographed the coupling at Buckle Bypass in Seaford during 2013. This was followed shortly afterwards with a video of the same event which Mark had managed to capture using his iPhone.
Neil, how rare is it an event to see this species mating in the UK?
Well, it's very rare, but increasingly less so. Mating's now being observed on a number of occasions, several localities in Kent and on several occasions in Sussex, particularly around Seaford.
So, one thing which has puzzled me is when do they mate, before or after they migrate?
Well, this is again something that we found out just in the last couple of years. In Jeremy Thomas's fantastic book, Butterflies of Britain and Ireland, he speculates that long-tailed blue must mate before it migrates because of the evidence that we have in the UK prior to 2013. The chance of a male and a female migrating and then actually finding each other and procreating as they have done on British soil is unlikely. So he theorised that the females must be carrying fertilised eggs before they actually set off. And now we have a little bit more information on this because we know that that's correct, because in 2013 the Sussex-born brood, we saw males and females copulating, but we didn't see any eggs. The females seemingly just flew south. So there is clear evidence that long-tailed blues, under certain circumstances at least, do mate and then migrate. But in 2015, on 2 occasions, once in Kent and once on Sussex soil, migrant butterflies, primary migrant butterflies, showing a lot of wear and tear, a lot of age, was seen mating on arrival. So it appears they do both. Buccal bypass, a very battered male and female were seen pairing, and not only that, but the female was laying eggs only 10 minutes later. So that demonstrates beyond all doubt that it was mating on arrival, and indeed probably a second mating. Well, we know it was a second mating. She had to have been mated previously to being laying eggs 10 minutes after copulating again. So it looks to me that long-tailed blues will sometimes mate before migrating and sometimes on arrival.
And so, for me, the next sighting was pivotal. But perhaps Nigel Symington should explain.
And I had a fantastic day out. Neil asked me to join him to go looking for them on the Downs. And we met up on a piece of rough grassland at the end of the Brighton racecourse, just next to a big television tower. But it's rough grass, and there's quite a lot of everlasting pea growing there. And we looked around for about half an hour, and then noticed this rather inconspicuous little butterfly flying around. And when it settled, we were able to go up and have a look at it, and it was indeed a male long-tailed blue. It was a little bit tatty, and it was just so exciting to think that here was a sort of once-in-a-lifetime butterfly. And it had been seen in the county in 2013, and I'd missed it. And yet here we were, I had another chance, and I was confronted with this beautiful little butterfly, and when you got up close you could see its long tails and see all the beautiful colour on the wings. And what a fantastic opportunity to have a second chance to see it.
So finally it's happened. After nearly 2 years of looking for a long-tailed blue, I've finally seen my first British long-tailed blue, my first Sussex long-tailed blue. I can't tell you how very excited I am about this. I'm with Mark Colvin at the moment, and we're at the top of Brighton Racecourse, right on the edge near the allotments, and I saw something fly down by the allotments. It was clearly something which I hadn't really seen in the UK before. It was a bit worn, it was quite large for a Lycaenian, browny blue. It went down really fast down the edge of the allotments, and then all of a sudden, before you know it, it was gone. I was a bit perplexed. Did I see it? Did I not? I don't know. And then Mark and I walked around again. We looked, and all of a sudden we saw something flying around in a sort of circular motion in one part of the grassland. And then it settled, and it was a long-tailed blue. It was so quick, it settled down. We went to get a photograph, it was gone. It flew onto the path, we tried to get a photograph again, and it was gone, but it was most definitely a long-tailed blue.
Mark and I searched in vain for the rest of the day and never saw Neil and Nigel's butterfly again. However, we did notice some egg laying had occurred on the broad-leaved everlasting pea, and so we decided to return the following day to investigate.
I think this site has great potential. I'm very excited about going to see how many eggs we can actually find.
I totally agree.
But we've got to do this in a very systematic way, haven't we?
Yeah, it's quite a big site, and I think we need to sort of break it up into sectors and work through it systematically, and record every single plant that we can find.
Yeah, well, let's get on with it, shall we?
Indeed, let's go. Yeah, we've got another egg here, Dan. This particular one is a fresh egg, which is exciting. The eggs of the long-tailed blue are about 0.5 millimetre in diameter, which I know is very tiny, and you might think, how the hell can you see those when you're actually looking for them? But they are quite clearly visible, particularly under a hand lens, once you're out in the field. They have a small depression in the middle, which is known as the micropyle, and it's via this point at which the larvae actually emerges. I mean, obviously we found, looking around this morning, that we found both emerged and fresh eggs, which is, very exciting for the site. And obviously a number of the eggs will have fallen off the plants when they've emerged. I believe there is some element of the larvae actually eating the egg as well. I don't know whether they eat the whole egg. I've never actually seen that, but obviously what does eat the eggs, and we've seen on a number of the plants that we've looked at, we've had a situation where there have been slugs and snails which will actually be grazing off eggs, and that will be grazing off both fresh eggs and the actual shells that have actually been left behind. I mean, most of the plants in this area that I've looked at have had eggs on them.
Oh, it's so exciting not knowing what you're going to see. Oh, and there's a lovely one. That's great.
Right, I've got another one here, Dan. In fact, I've got another 3.
In 2013, Mark had decided to rear through and photograph some long-tailed blue larvae and wrote this up on Dispar, the online journal of Lepidoptera. During a break in the egg counting, Mark described a little of what he'd learned.
After the larvae has actually reached sufficient size, which is normally after the second instar, it comes out of the flower heads and actually moves into the seeds of the everlasting pea. And the third instar larvae bores a hole, goes in, and then turns around and seals the entrance with silk. I believe this is due to protection against predators. And then what happens, as I say, the third and fourth instar larvae feed on the seeds in the pod, by which time the larvae is about 13, 14 millimetres long, and has actually taken on quite a beautiful pinkish hue until such stage that the larvae emerge and then look for pupation sites. And but as I say, this is where the bulk of the feeding is done actually in the seed pod.
Well, weather conditions are really deteriorating now, which is just as well because we've finished, haven't we? And we've got this magic number. So what's the magic number, Mark?
The magic number is 82 eggs.
82. And of course, I guess we must have missed some. So
I'm sure we've missed some, Dan. I mean, I think we've been as thorough as we can looking over this site, and before we get blown away, I think, we've done a good job. I think we've been thorough, we've been systematic, and I don't think we've missed many plants if we've missed any at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, great.
Yeah. So now it's all about what happens next, isn't it?
Indeed. And I think we need to keep a close eye on this site and watch what happens over the next few weeks, and hopefully the weather will improve. Because if it stays like this, well, we're not going to see much at all. But hopefully the weather will break in about a week's time, or hopefully sooner. And we may see a fresh emergence of British long-tailed blues, and I think that's be very exciting again.
We didn't have to wait long because on the 19th of September, 2 females were seen at New Haven Tide Mills, and this was followed on the 8th of October by a male at Upper Beeding Cement Works. And then I got a call from Neil Hume. A newly emerged female had been found.
That's it, guys. That's it. 2 years. Got a photograph of a wild one.
You can go home now.
Okay, well done.
The weather conditions during this late October weekend were cool, and consequently long-tailed blues that emerged on this Sussex site were unable to raise their body temperatures. This meant that the Upper Beeding Cement Works became a reliable location for butterfly enthusiasts from far and wide to photograph this once-in-a-lifetime species. For Chris Corrigan, this was a species at the top of his life list, but he was unable to get to the cement works because of work commitments. However, this did not stop Michael and Claire Blencoe taking Chris's wife Helen to see the long-tailed blue at Upper Beeding and mischievously posting this image on social media for Chris to see. Final discovery for this weekend was a game made by Neil Hume on Sunday the 25th of October at Lancing, where one of the 2 female specimens showed aberrations in its hindwings, which Neil speculated was due to temperature variations whilst the chrysalis of this individual had been forming. The last week of October 2015 was good weather, and sightings were made at Brighton Racecourse and New Haven, but my penultimate encounter with this species came at Southwick Basin.
Yeah, it was just up here.
So it just flew up in front of you?
Yeah, I was just walking along the edge of the privet scrub, and I put it up about there, and it just nipped over there.
Wow.
And then dropped into the grass. And so I just raced over, cast my shadow over it, and got on the phone.
Good, brilliant.
This exceptionally large, freshly emerged male was extraordinary in that its tails were far shorter than had been previously observed on any other long-tailed blue. Given its pristine condition, this clearly was not the result of a bird strike, and so this shorter tail length must be considered a part of the natural variation within this species. To be able to broadcast all over Brighton, a television mast was built on the highest chalk outcrop above the city. This was exactly where the hill-topping immigrant long-tailed blues navigated towards after they made landfall. And this was where the 2015 finale took place.
Got it, yeah?
Yeah. They don't seem to be disturbed by shadows.
It's moved around a bit so far. I mean,
It bloody would.
you found it up around the corner, but it has sort of been moving around a little bit.
That's magic, isn't it?
get in there and see what you want to do.
Are you good? You guys will find such beauty.
There's a few around. It's been a good year. I think it's been a good year for them.
Well then, Chris, 2 years now I understand you've been waiting. How's that feel?
Oh, it's fantastic, Dan. Absolutely fantastic. I never thought it was going to happen. I thought I'd missed it again. 1st of November, absolutely fantastic. All that way, it's worth it now.
Now, funny thing is that you took 2 years to find this, didn't you? So did I, but I beat you by 6 weeks on the same site.
Ah, right. Okay. Well, it doesn't matter in the end. It's in the net, the proverbial net.
Yeah.
That is, Dan, the proverbial net. But
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, and the other thing I think is quite interesting is that, of course, yours must be the progeny of the immigrant that I saw.
Ah, right. Okay.
So that's quite interesting in itself. Well, anyway, well done.
Thank you very much, Dan. And I think I might be having a drink or two tonight.
I think you should. Yeah.
Excellent.
Given the levels of enthusiasm that butterfly watchers have for their quarry, it's of no surprise that ecotourism holidays continue to captivate passionate individuals with a love for the natural world.
Classy bit of sunbathing, eh?
Oops, it's off.
The sense of camaraderie was fantastic and started to feel like some incredible butterfly fair. And then to cap it all off, we got a call from Neil Hugh.
Then I go, yes? Yeah. You're looking at a mail at Lancing. Go, go, go. Don't talk to me.
Mark,
Dan.
amazing. Would we have ever believed this type of weather?
I don't think we would. You think 1st of November today, blue sky, sunshine, must be what, 18, 90 degrees, possibly hotter in areas. Incredible.
Perfect conditions, really, isn't it?
It is, and perfect conditions, of course, for long-tailed blue butterfly.
Which is exactly what we were speculating. We were saying, oh, wouldn't it be great if we had a good end to the season? I think it's fair to say we have.
Yeah, I think so. And you think Neil had a female long-tailed blue here yesterday. We've had 2 male long-tailed blues here today. I had a male and a female here a couple of days back. I mean, it's been incredible, and I think the most exciting thing is that this is happen in on the 1st of November.
Yeah. It's historic, isn't it? Really,
it is. I don't think it's ever been recorded in Britain before that we've had November sightings of long-tailed blue.
Yeah.
I know we've had them as early as June in this country before, but I can't remember the latest previous records. But I'm sure 1st of November is a bit of a record.
Yeah, and I think that we've said this before, haven't we? That to be a naturalist these days is massively exciting because of what climate change is doing, but at the same time you're always in the back of your mind thinking that actually it's not good what's going on. These are things nature is telling us something that's going on, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a change afoot, and yes, we can get excited about seeing these things, but obviously I think it's also warning us about something more underlying that is a bit worrying.
Yeah.
This is a big deal. I mean, I'm a journalist, so I might get accused of exaggerating things, but this is such a big deal that I persuaded my editors to give me another butterfly column to specifically write about this story, about the long-tailed blue arriving on the south coast and being sighted in November. I mean, it's insane. It's if you put that scenario to any butterfly prof or lepidopterist even 10 years ago, they would have just gone, that's bonkers. The long-tailed blue in November in Britain flying, no way. But it's happening, and it's a sign, of how crazy climate change is, but also how unpredictable butterflies and insects are.
It's very difficult, of course, to know exactly what's going on with these rare events, and we may just be seeing the start of something much bigger. We do know that climate change is having a really big impact on butterflies and many other species that live here in Britain, and of course the same will be happening across Europe and further afield as well. So it may be that these new arrivals of things like long-tailed blue are the start of a much bigger tide of new exciting butterflies reaching our shores.
Well, the long-tailed blue may be the forerunner of actually quite a lot of butterflies that might get here from Europe with climate change. So we know a lot of species are spreading north in Europe, and they're actually at the edge of France and Belgium, and they could get here any year now. And so the long-tailed blue obviously has got here and has bred for a few years, may come again, may establish populations, like many moths have established populations in the last 20 years from the continent. We're getting a lot more species coming over, and so we might these might come and enrich our lives like many other species did arriving in the past, and they may make up a bit for some of the losses that of course we're suffering.
Where do you think these butterflies are coming from? Where exactly in Europe?
It's difficult to know for sure, but when we actually look at the pattern of movements with this big build-up on the coast, Brittany, Normandy, and into Belgium before they hop over the Channel, and a little bit of evidence as well from previous years. There's evidence of the butterfly moving through the Pyrenees. So it's down that part of southern Europe that I suspect ours are coming from. Probably some moving through the Pyrenees, some now probably permanently resident north of there, and then moving up through central parts of France to the coast, and slightly eastwards along through Belgium, because we saw a lot appearing in Belgium before they came over here in 2015.
Which was the better of the 2 years now?
That's very difficult to say. The reason for that is that 2013, the season, the long-tail blue season on British soil was early. In 2015, unfortunately, it was late. The August weather collapsed and that slowed things down. So we did actually manage to see a full breeding cycle on Sussex soil in 2013, where it was cut short in 2015 because everything happened later, and then winter started to bite, and the end of the season, probably a large number of the long-tail blues which bred on Sussex soil in 2015 never made it. So there were more observed in 2013, but I suspect that the actual initial influx of primary immigrants in 2015 was a similar magnitude, really.
Yeah.
So 65, I believe, a minimum of 65, both migrants and British-born or Sussex-born long-tail blues were seen in 2013. The figure was mid-30s for 2015, but I think that the two events were probably of comparable sizes.
Now, I remember around this time, a lot of people saying, find the pea, find the butterfly.
Yeah.
I mean, how many sites in Sussex were we looking at in the 2 years in the end where we were finding the butterfly?
Off the top of my head, I couldn't give you an accurate figure, but it's around about a dozen, something like that. Yeah. But the amazing thing is the fact that in 2015, the butterfly was being seen in the same sites.
Yes.
And this has actually been noted by Guy Padfield in Switzerland. He notes that it's the same nooks and crannies on his patch in Switzerland are visited by long-tail blues year after year.
Yeah.
So they have a habit of returning to the same spots.
Okay. But if you want to see and photograph long-tailed blues, come to Sussex. You might think, oh, I'll go to the Mediterranean, there's loads of them there. There are. They're hyperactive. You can't get anywhere near them in that intense heat. But here in sunny Sussex by the sea, where the temperatures by long-tailed blue standards are lower, they bask. And also, we know where they're going to emerge as well. So, Sussex by the sea for long-tailed blues.
I can't believe we're back here, December 2019.
I know, it's incredible. And where we're standing, only about 8 weeks ago, there were still long-tailed blues sitting, perching on these little bramble stalks here.
So what have we learned? You know, this is the third big migration, isn't it?
It is. 2013, we saw the first unprecedented influx of long-tailed blues. Prior to that, it was a very, very rare visitor to our shores. We'd had a couple of reasonably large influxes, 1945, 1990, but 2013, that was really a turning point. Unprecedented numbers flooded into south of England, many of those being spotted in Sussex and in Kent. 2015, they came back again in similar, slightly lower numbers. 2019, this year we've seen the biggest influx yet, and although I haven't done all of the stats yet, probably talking about 300 plus adult long-tailed blues being seen in Sussex alone.
Is that because we know where to look now?
To some extent it is. Clearly a hardcore of long-tailed blue enthusiasts have learned a lot since 2013 about where to seek the butterfly out, but we've also been assisted by the butterfly's habits, which involve seeking out the same areas year on year. It's a butterfly which seems to immediately head for high ground, hilltops, in the same way as other species such as the swallowtail, the continental swallowtail, does. And it can probably detect one of its food plants, everlasting broad-leaved pea, probably can detect those plants from quite a long range. I mean, they're pungent, all of the members of the pea family. And it's not just the the everlasting pea that they're seeking out. We're standing next to allotments here. There's all sorts of other leguminous plants that they're using, and we've got quite strong evidence that elsewhere it will use other plants such as broom. But 2019 has been quite incredible. Over 300 adults. I suspect when we tally it up, similar number of eggs. Almost everywhere I've looked where broad-leaved everlasting pea is growing, I found the eggs. And many of those places are exactly the same locations where we saw the butterfly in 2013 and 2015.
So does that mean that we should start to be thinking about managing these locations?
Yeah, I've actually had talks with Network Rail about what they can do on their property, because broad-leaved everlasting pea, it's a feral plant which often escapes from gardens onto railway lines. The action of trains moving along sucks the seed along, and places like Lancing Station are fantastic sites to go and see the long-tailed blue. I've counted in excess of 10 in a day there, and the numbers on some sites in New Haven have been quite incredible. One chap managed to see over 30 long-tailed blue adults in a single day.
In New Haven?
In New Haven, yeah. 30 on a single site in a single day.
It's astonishing.
Prior to 2013, the total record for Sussex, the total record was 22 adults from mid-19th century all the way up, and yet one chap has seen 30 long-tailed blues in a single day.
It begs the question, are we ever going to get bored of seeing this butterfly?
I don't think so. It's a butterfly with real character. It's pugnacious, it's fast-flying, and it's very beautiful, particularly when we see the freshly emerged adults, the British brood that we're now getting. So what's happening is the butterfly is migrating from the continent, usually arriving at the end of July and through August, laying eggs, and then we're seeing Sussex-born butterflies emerging from mid-September onwards, and we're seeing them as late November now, which is quite incredible.
So like you said, 2013, 2015, 2-year gap, and then all the way to 2019. Do you see this happening as a little bit more regular and perhaps a little bit more frequently?
Yes, because in the intervening years we are seeing long-tailed blues in lower numbers. So 2013, big influx. 2014, the butterfly was here again, but in low numbers. 2015, big influx. Again, ones and twos. 2016, 17, 18, 2019, boom, it's here again, and in really big numbers.
It's like very exciting times ahead.
It is, yeah.
At some point during the making of this film, somebody said to me, Dan, if you'd seen a long-tailed blue in the UK before 2013, you would have been thought of as a very lucky person. And this is because a sighting of this species was so widely considered to be a once-in-a-lifetime experience. As this story of the long-tailed blue began to unfold, it became apparent to me that this was in fact a once-in-a-lifetime story. It soon became obvious that we were in the right place at the right time to witness one of nature's most remarkable responses to human-induced climate change. And it became evident that this was a story that just had to be documented. It would have been incredibly difficult to carry out this work without the support of lots of different people. And during this process, a very real sense of camaraderie developed, in part, I think, because we all knew that this was an immensely privileged position to be in, to observe an astonishing natural spectacle of this kind. And so some may now consider this film that you've just watched as a form of historical document. And if this is the case, then it's only because of the inclusive and cooperative way in which a host of different volunteers have worked together, willingly sharing their tales of their experiences with this butterfly. Each story weaving together to describe the trickle that became the flood. Thank you all.